flocks of pelicans. In fact, that's where Alcatraz got its name. The Spanish named the island after the pelicans, Los Alcatrazes. The U.S. Army decided Alcatraz Island was the perfect place for a fort to defend the bay from invaders. But this cold and windy rock was such an unpleasant place that they changed their minds. It was now the perfect place for a military prison, and eventually a federal penitentiary. It was a time when gangsters were becoming heroes to people. The government needed to send a message that crime did not pay. So they created Alcatraz, the very last stop in the country's prison system. The place to send the worst criminals of all.
Yeah, my name is Leon Whitey Thompson. My number was 1465, AZ 1465.
Listen carefully now. You're about to hear from former inmates, guards, and residents of The Rock to tell you their stories themselves.
I was a man that had total hatred in them days. I hated anything that walked or crawled on this earth. And when you got a man like that in prison, you got to get rid of him. And that's what they did. They shipped me to Alcatraz.
These were hard men, kidnappers, bank robbers, killers, men so dangerous that when the first batch arrived by train in 1934, not one was allowed to step down onto free soil. They simply loaded the train cars, one by one, onto barges, and floated them out to the island with the inmates chained up inside. Rumor was that if a man died on Alcatraz, his corpse would leave the same way, stone cold dead, but in chains. With men like these, you could never be too careful. The building you see on top of the hill was the inmate's new home, the Alcatraz cell house. One described it as a tomb of living souls. Some would stay for a year, others for 20 or 25 years or more. To get an idea of the accommodations inside, go ahead and reach your arms out as far as you can from side to side. That's how wide an Alcatraz cell is, only 5 feet across. Now reach your hands up high above your head. That's how tall, and only a bit longer from end to end. The cell house might look huge from here, but it was never completely filled. No more than 300 inmates lived inside at any time. 300. They could all fit on this boat ride today. Notice the circular water tower. Alcatraz is surrounded by water, but on the island itself, not a drop. Fresh water had to come from San Francisco, and not by any pipeline. 2 or 3 times a week, a barge arrived, full of 180,000 gallons of fresh water. It was pumped up into that tank. The tall smokestack marks the Alcatraz powerhouse. One thing that couldn't be brought out here by boat was electricity, so they made their own. One young man was only 21 years old when he first climbed onto The Rock. His name was Frank Heaney, and he was a guard. In fact, the youngest guard ever to serve on Alcatraz.
I had a very difficult time. They really took advantage of my age. The old saying that misery loves company, they're very miserable, so they like to make you miserable too. They had no tailor-made cigarettes, they had no candy bars, chewing gum, soft drinks, radios, television, newspapers, rolls, or rehabilitation programs. They had none of that by being sent to Alcatraz.
Men sent to Alcatraz considered themselves the elite among convicts.
But on The Rock, I'm not trying to put a feather in my hat or not, but they had a lot of class.
You could say they were a higher caliber of criminals. They were more or less professionals, people who were mail clerks and banks and so forth. Some were in for murder. They were a cut above average, the average criminal.
Robert Stroud, the Birdman, Al Capone, Mickey Cohen, Frankie Garbo, Machine Gun Kelly. They just another stupid fool like I was, and that's the way most of the other cons felt about, because everybody was the same on The Rock.
Nobody learned that faster than Alphonse Big Al Capone, Mr. Scarface himself. himself. Capone ruled like a king in any other prison, but here on the Rock, he mopped floors just like anybody else. With no one to protect him, Capone was a sitting duck. The big man was roughed up, beaten, and even stabbed. But Capone had carried his real killer with him to Alcatraz. A case of untreated syphilis was eating his brain and slowly driving him insane. He ended up locked in the bug cage, the fenced-off section of the hospital for mental patients. Still the tough guy, Capone fought with his ward mate, not with guns or knives, but with bedpans, full bedpans. Afterwards, the once mighty crime czar had to be washed off with a hose. Look up ahead at the 3-story guards barracks above the landing dock. You'll also see a metal frame tower at the right corner of the dock.
The tower that you see in front of us is the dock tower. It was manned 24 hours a day. It had a large group of weapons, had a 30-06 rifle, 30 caliber rifle, tear gas gun, 38 revolver. Men were shot and killed from the tower.
One officer would sit up on the top of that tiny tower, 75 feet above the island, locked in for 8 hours at a time, watching. Just watching. No matter what kind of weather.